Good afternoon, and thank you for connecting with the Pennsylvania Game Commission today. My name is Lori. My colleague Brittany and I will be managing the sessions today, and we are fortunate to be joined by Mary Jo Casalena, the wild turkey biologist for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. She'll be speaking with us about wild turkey management in Pennsylvania. I'd like to do a quick audio check to make sure everyone can hear me. So if you'll check the control panel to the right of your screen and send us some text in the type question here box, we'll begin when we have confirmation that audio is working. While you're doing that, I can let you know that we expect the presentation to last about 20 minutes, followed by a question and answer period of about 10 to 15 minutes. For those of you dialing in to listen by phone today, please note that this is not a toll-free call and you may receive long-distance charges from your service provider. If you'd like to follow along on paper, you can download the handout of slides from the handout section. And without further ado, let me make sure that we have audio here. It looks like we do. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jo Casalena. Thanks for joining us today, Mary Jo. Would you like to share a little bit about your background with folks before you get started?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Lori. Yeah, I'm the wild turkey biologist for the Game Commission, as Lori said. I started in that position in 1999 after I moved over from being a waterfowl biologist up in the northeast part of the state. And prior to that, I was the farmland biologist, bird biologist, I should say, with the Game Commission. So all of my experience has really been with game birds, and need I say more? But you know, that wild turkey has been my favorite. So, I plan to stay here for as long as I can. And with that, I would like to start our presentation, and then, as you can see here from the slide, it's the role of turkey seasons in turkey population management. When Lori and I thought this would be a great aspect to talk about, especially because the fall turkey hunting season is getting started here in less than a month. And so we wanted to explain to people, you know, how we go by actually managing turkeys within Pennsylvania. And so our turkey hunting strategy is twofold. We want to provide a statewide spring season, as well as provide what we call a conservative fall either sex season. Conservative because we have it only in management units that can sustain a fall harvest. And in so doing, with these two strategies, we strive to maintain the turkey population that is either stable or growing. And in order to maintain this strategy in Pennsylvania, let's look a little bit at our turkey harvest and turkey hunter numbers, and then you can see why we kind of have to have a conservative approach. Pennsylvania actually maintains the highest total, that is, if you look at spring plus fall harvest in the country. As you can see from this graph, we do maintain pretty high harvest. Now, our spring harvest, shown here in the green, they peaked at about 2001, but today we maintain spring harvest between 34,000 and 41,000. And Pennsylvania's spring harvests have consistently ranked within the top 5 within the country. Now, you can see here from the brown, the brown line on the graph, our fall harvests, they peaked in about 1995 and then again about 2001. And even though our fall harvests have declined about 60% since 2001, Pennsylvania typically still ranks second in the country in terms of fall harvest. So from a population management perspective on my end, actually these lower fall harvests are desirable now that the turkey population has decreased after our restoration efforts, because that population really can no longer contain that surplus population to maintain consistently high fall harvest. Going now next to turkey hunter numbers, Pennsylvania also tops the country for the total number of turkey hunter numbers in both spring and fall. We average in the spring about 225,000 turkey hunters, shown in the green graph here. Compare that to the second highest state, which is Missouri. They have approximately, on average, 150,000 hunters. Now, for fall, even though we have declined in terms of the number of hunters, we still average about 152,000 fall hunters. Compare that to the second highest state, Wisconsin. They only average about 60,000 fall hunters. So due to both our large turkey harvest and our large number of turkey hunters, the Game Commission must manage harvest pretty conservatively. So now let's look a little bit about how we manage the spring season. Okay, so we set the spring season in a way which balances both satisfying our hunters with protecting our hens from harvest and from nest abandonment. Now, everybody likes to hear the gobble, and hunter satisfaction is maximized when that spring season coincides with the peak of the gobbling. But we need to maintain a conservative strategy because of how I showed before. We have high harvest and we have high number of hunters. So we actually have high potential for high levels of nest abandonment and accidental hen harvest. And so because of that, we open the season during what we call the peak of nest incubation. Hens don't begin incubating their nests until they have laid a full clutch. And through our research, we have determined that the average peak of when the hens begin to incubate their nests is around May 1st. And so we open the spring season the Saturday closest to May 1st. Well, that also has kind of an added benefit, because that when hens begin incubating, it also sparks a second peak of gobbling. And so then the gobblers are more responsive to hunters' calls. So on the average, we try to open up we try to maintain that opening right around the peak of gobbling. Well, that second peak of gobbling, which is when the hens are the peak of their first nesting. So we also have a bearded bird only regulation for the spring, because we're focusing on harvesting those gobblers. And we have a season limit of 1. If you care to purchase this special license, then it's a season bag limit of 2. And that is to be conservative with the gobbler harvest as well. So through our research, we have found out that we can actually allow an all-day spring season, but only during the second half of the season. And again, that's to be conservative and to minimize hen disturbance. We began this in 2011. It provides more hunting opportunity, and with that additional hunting opportunity, it's actually creating that opportunity with just minimal hen disturbance. First of all, it's later during the stages of incubation, and so hens are less likely to abandon their nest or be disturbed by a hunter, and there's just fewer hunters in the woods during the second half of the season. So in summary, if we look at the spring season, it has minimal effect on the population because we're harvesting males after the majority of the mating has occurred. One male breeds several females, so even if we take out some males during breeding, there's always more males available because of their polygamous behavior. Males don't assist in raising of the young, and so they're considered excess to the population at that point. And again, we open the season after the majority of hens have begun incubating their first nest. Now, in terms of the fall harvest, we talked about the spring harvest having minimal effect on the population. Well, the fall harvest can impact populations, and so we do manage that very conservatively. Turkey harvest during the fall season don't actually decrease the amount of predation or winter mortality that turkeys will see. basically, from our research, from our transmitted hens, we have found that their survival is highest during the winter. So that fall harvest isn't taking out any surplus of the population, but it is considered additive mortality. And so during the fall, that we are harvesting either a male or a female simply because it's difficult to tell the difference in the sex of the young of the year. And so we have that opportunity of either sex. However, we found from our research that about 60% of the harvest are females. And a lot of this has to do with how we hunt during the fall. We're typically hunting those brood flocks and taking out, possibly the adult, the hens, or, or the young female hens are a little bit higher, have a higher susceptibility to being called in than the juvenile males. And so we're hunting those brood flocks. Whereas during the fall, the adult males oftentimes will roam alone or in small flocks, and they're just typically more difficult to call in. So during the fall season, the hunting-related mortality isn't the biggest factor in hen survival. Obviously turkeys are a prey species, so they succumb to a lot of predation. But hunting-related mortality is the one factor that we can control. So how do we control that? Well, we manage the fall harvest through our season length. So the longer the fall season, the larger the female harvest. So we have a 1 week, 2 week, or a 3 week regular season, and then we also have a 3-day Thanksgiving season in many areas. Now, that longer season is okay if the current population is large, but it's actually not very good if we're trying to manage for higher populations. And it's also a concern if we have low summer reproduction, if we have low reproductive success, then there's less juveniles in the fall population, and the harvest consists of a higher proportion of your adult birds. And so you need that carryover of those adult birds into the next breeding season, because those adult gobblers and hens are more reproductively successful. And so the whole idea of the fall season is to maintain a low hen harvest, especially in a state like Pennsylvania where we have so many hunters. And so we manage the season by wildlife management unit, again, to control the harvest of hens. We have a 1 bird bag limit. The season goes from anywhere from a closed to a 3-week season during that first season period. And then in many of our management units, we also have a 3-day Thanksgiving season. So for this year, for this fall, 2016, if you can see on this map, we have a color-coded map. The 1 week season, October 29th through November 5th, is in our wildlife management units in the western part of the state, 1A, 1B, and 2A. Our 2-week first season is in all of the management units that are colored in brown here throughout the state. We do still have 3-week first seasons in management units 2C, 4E, as well as 2B, which is the Pittsburgh general metropolitan area, where it is a shotgun and archery only season. And then we have a 3-day November 3rd to November 5th season in Wildlife Management Unit 5A. This is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday season. And we still maintain a closed fall season in management units 5B, 5C, and 5D because of the low turkey populations there. Now, we also have that 3-day Thanksgiving season, which a lot of people like to have because it just has a nice time for folks to get together with family and friends during the holiday to go out and hunt. And so we do have that Thanksgiving 3-day season in the management units on this map shaded in yellow and orange. 2B, again, 2B is a shotgun archery season only. But in management unit 1B, we are trying to allow that population to increase, and so it's only a 1-week regular season. It does not, this year, does not have the November 24th through 26th season. Also, 5A has also had that 3-day November 3rd to November 5th season for the last several years. And again, management units 5B, 5C, and 5D are closed to fall hunting. So those are our seasons for this year. What about some fall season tips, you might ask? Well, first and foremost, it's real important to scout before the season. Try to find that food. If you can find the food, hunt where the food is, either in agricultural areas where the crops haven't been completely harvested yet, or in the woods where there's acorns and grape crops. This year, I'm happy to announce that we have average to above average acorn and grape crops throughout most of the Commonwealth. I do know that in some areas it is spotty. So in some of your traditional fall turkey hunting areas, if there are no acorns there, there's not going to be any turkeys there. So it's real important to get out there and scout before the season and see where the food is. Oftentimes we've noted from our research that when food is abundant, turkeys are nomadic. They don't really need to stay in one area because there's just food all over. And so it's a good thing to scout ahead of time to try to figure out if there's a pattern to those turkeys. This is important also in the big woods areas. We found that when food is spotty, when acorn crop is is lousy, then the turkeys will remain where there is food, whether it's along the edges of fields or if it's in the big woods. Then if you can find those specific areas where there is food, then that's where the turkeys will be. This year, with the abundance of food, then it's a great idea to get out there and find out what kind of patterns the turkeys are using. In terms of movement, and another tip, it seems like for most of the research that has been conducted, turkeys get tipped off more by movement than by the color of your clothing. And it's actually kind of a benefit during the fall because those inexperienced brood flocks, sometimes they don't really care about any kind of movement, about any kind of calls or your clothing. It seems like you can do almost anything and still call in birds. Sometimes when it's a small brood flock with some very good adult brood hens, then you have to be on your toes in terms of all movement and clothing. But oftentimes, even with those experienced brood hens, and even sometimes with gobblers, it seems like any kind of calling will bring them in. So the fall turkey hunting season is really a perfect opportunity for introducing a new hunter, a novice hunter, or a mentor. So keep that in mind when you're out there. And whether you're hunting in the morning or in the evening, sometimes it doesn't seem to matter. I love going out in the morning and trying to call the birds in off of the roost, but I also love going out in the late afternoon and just walking miles and miles until I can find a bird. Whatever you do, enjoy the time of field because Pennsylvania's woods are beautiful this time of the year. And with that, I will close my part of the discussion and I will open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Mary Jo. So we do have a couple questions that are starting to come in. Let's see. We have a question from Kent. He would like to know, what are the common predators of turkeys?
Well, the most common predators of turkeys are your mammalian predators, so that would be fox, bobcats, coyotes. Those are the most common mammalian predators that I have found from my research. And also red-tailed hawks, sometimes red-tailed hawks in terms of avian predators, but more often great horned owls. Great horned owls will take an adult as well as juvenile birds.
Gotcha. You had mentioned low reproductive success in the spring. What are some things that might impact the reproductive success?
The most important aspect of low reproductive spring nest success is the weather during the peak of hatching. If you have cold, wet, cold and rainy weather during the peak of hatch, the first peak of hatch is right about the last week of May, the first week of June. And our telemetry data shows that when you have that cold, wet weather, it's kind of a triple whammy to turkeys. Your ground predators, which are your major predators for your nesting hens, because hens nest on the ground, your ground predators can smell them out. It's called the wet hen syndrome. Okay, so there's a higher predation rate of the hens as well as the young. When it's real cold and wet, the holts are it's more difficult for the hen to brood her clutch successfully. They're making more noise, and so they're more susceptible to predation. They're more prone to just succumbing to the weather, the cold weather, and just dying outright from the weather. But also their food base, which is insects, the first few weeks of their life. That insect base is not as readily available because of the cold, wet weather. And so they can succumb to just malnutrition. And so during those wet, cool springs, that's when we see the lowest levels of poult survival and nest success.
Gotcha. We have another question about turkey hunting tips. How do they differ between fall and spring hunting?
Good question. So the spring season, you're mainly trying to call in a gobbler. And now for both seasons, you have to call the turkey into you. It's illegal to stalk turkeys. Obviously, it's not very safe either, especially with all the turkey hunters that we have in the Commonwealth. But so you're trying to call in a turkey either spring or fall, but during the spring you set up a location. You're trying to mimic a hen and calling a gobbler into you. Whereas in the fall, a lot of times, most of the time, people are hunting those brood flocks and trying to locate brood flocks. So once you find a flock, and a lot of times, you can hunt in the afternoon. It's a great way to set up. Just walk around and try to find a brood flock, break them up, and then set up where you broke them up, and then call them back in using like a lost poult call, kind of saying, "Hey mom, come back," or "Hey flock, come back, I'm here," or have an assembly call, pretending you're the adult hen and you're calling your flock back in. You can also during the fall set up in early morning hours and try to call them in off of the roost. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you have to call them in and break them up again, because sometimes they're not as interested in coming into the calls in the fall right off of the roost. A lot of times you have to break the flock up and then call it in. So it is a strategy. So it's kind of neat because you're almost hunting a different type of bird between the spring season and the fall. So they're completely different types of strategy. So it's a lot of fun. It's completely different than the spring season.
Great, thanks. Nick has a law enforcement question, which you may be able to answer. Feel free to defer it, and we can answer it through GM comments if you'd rather do that. He wants to know if you can walk to the hunting area prior to dawn starting time, or do you have to begin your journey at the published starting time?
Oh, great question, and I can answer that, luckily. You can, yes, you can go in before dawn, and that's actually preferable for, for most hunters if they're hunting early morning hours, and that's how I always do it. Go in, when it's pitch black out, so you don't disturb the turkeys. Luckily, even if a turkey hears you, if you're quiet enough and you're set up, close to where they're roosting, they have very poor, nighttime seeing abilities. So they won't see you. They'll hear you, because of course they can hear anything. But if you're quiet enough and you're not making a lot of noise, and that what they're hearing won't disturb them, and they'll still, fly down most of the time. So it is great to get into your area before any light and before the turkey can actually see you coming in.
Great. Here we have a question from George. Are there general findings available from 2016 brood nesting success surveys?
Yes, and we have that online. If you go to our turkey webpage, or even if you click on the August brood survey that's on our website, we have a table of all of the sightings that we're seeing across the state and by Wildlife Management Unit for the month of August, and also the poult-to-hen ratio. And that poult-to-hen ratio, that is, basically that's our number that tells us what how good the reproductive year was. And it looks like it was an above average, slightly above average year in Pennsylvania. So that's good news, because it's that spring reproductive success that really keeps the population going. Because turkeys are not a long-lived species, and so we do need that annual recruitment into the population. So I'm glad to report that that was a bit above average.
That is good.
Yeah, so go ahead and check it. Yeah, check out the turkey webpage or our homepage for that table. And now this was the first year for our volunteer web-based August sighting survey. And so, it was our inaugural year. And so we look forward to people participating in that during the future. We still do conduct our own in-house wildlife conservation officer summer sighting surveys, and it was nice to see that the sightings by the public did coincide with the sightings from our wildlife conservation officers.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Philip has a question about attracting and holding turkeys on his property. He says his property is about 1,800 acres, mostly wooded. What can he do to help attract and hold the turkeys there?
Okay, so it's mostly wooded. One of the best ways to hold and attract turkeys is make sure you have a good an abundance of mass-producing trees. So I don't know what age level. If it's wooded, it's probably varying age levels. But you try to manage your woodlot so you're constantly going to have some mature timber, some early successional timber for early successional areas for nesting and brood rearing, as well as the mature timber that has good mass production, whether it's beech or oak. If you have if you don't have much regeneration, then try to manage for better regeneration, whether it's from burning or timber harvesting. You can burn out do some prescribed fires to get rid of the birch and red maples and allow better mass production. But creating some openings is a great idea. We only recommend, though, about 10 to 15% of your area in openings, small 1 to 2 acre size openings that are that will be great for not only turkey brood rearing, but also for other species. And then the other thing, another aspect of holding turkeys is to create some winter cover. So if you have some deep hollows, make sure you have some good conifer thickets in there, or even if it's some type of conifer thickets, even in exposed areas. Conifers meaning pines and your evergreen trees, or even other kinds of thickets where the birds can get out of the wind and get out of the weather. And then another aspect, winter survival, is maintaining some spring seeps. If you have spring seeps in your area, try to daylight them a little bit, allow a little bit of sunlight so that the water can remain snow-free during the winter periods. So those are what I really recommend, those aspects of maintaining food, nesting cover, brood rearing cover, and winter cover, as well as winter food.
Good deal. I think we have time for about 2 more questions. We actually have a few more than that, so I'm going to ask folks to send their questions, if we don't get to them today, to the PGC comments at pa.gov link, and we'll see if we can get to them that way if we're not able to answer them today. So we've got 2 more. Let's try, how do you estimate populations in the various management units?
How do we estimate populations in the various management units? Well, we use spring harvest as well as our summer sightings and bolt to hen ratio. That's our main way of determining the population. And actually, we look at population trends. So the way we're managing the turkey population is by trying to maintain that trend of spring harvest, summer sightings, and reproductive success, trying to manage those trends at a stable, increasing or decreasing level, depending on what our desire is for that management unit. So we don't necessarily care about specifically exact numbers of turkeys on the ground. What we're mainly concerned is the trend in that population. Does that answer?
I think that does. Thanks. And then Mike has a question about the August turkey sighting survey. He wants to know how that information is used. How do you factor in multiple reports of the same birds or same flocks? And this is the first time he took part in it, and he said he found it to be fun.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate your cooperation and your information, and that's a great question. We do ask people to not report, to only report that sighting once. But obviously, if it's a flock that's seen by multiple people, then so be it. So in terms of how we handle that, basically, again, we kind of look at, well, what we do is, this is the first year of using these data, but we're using the same methodology from one year to the next. So, so each year, we hope that any kind of bias that's built in is going to be consistent from one year to the next. And so that's how we handle multiple sightings of the same flock. The main reason why we've gone to this web-based reporting is mainly to be consistent with the other with the type of data that is being collected in other northeastern states. So now we, along with most of the other states in the Northeast, conduct a web-based survey in August, and now we have directly comparable data from state to state. And this is important because we're really trying to look at more of a regional approach of wild turkey management. And so now we can directly compare our turkey population trends to that of New York, Ohio, New Jersey, and other states in the Northeast, including Maine, because now we're all, conducting the same type of research and collecting the same type of data.
All right. Well, folks, we're sorry we haven't been able to get to everyone's questions today. This session has been recorded, and you should receive an email with a link to the recording within the next few hours. The recording will also be uploaded to the Game Commission's YouTube channel. I'd like to thank Mary Jo for joining us today and sharing her experience and time with us. We'd also like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us this afternoon, and hope you'll visit us again to learn more about Pennsylvania wildlife in upcoming webinars. And until then, we hope you're able to get outside and enjoy some of Pennsylvania's great outdoors. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Mary Jo.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.